After 7 long years of silence, Mikkel's polished Mercedes rolled slowly down the dusty gravel road, each mile stirring a heartbeat he thought was long buried. The familiar farm stretched out before him, but nothing felt the same. What Sophie was hiding beneath the quiet fields and weathered barns would shatter his world and unravel every truth he believed he'd left behind. This visit would change everything. Forever. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more thrilling stories. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update, and sit back, relax, and enjoy this captivating tale. The October rain hammered against the windshield of Mikkel Anderson's midnight blue Mercedes as he navigated the narrow country road cutting through Jutland's patchwork farmland. His knuckles whitened against the leather steering wheel. 7 years. 7 years since he'd driven these roads, since he'd smelled the earthy sweetness of turned soil mixed with sea salt from the nearby Linford. The GPS chirped directions in its sterile voice, but Mikkel didn't need it. His body remembered every curve, every dip in the asphalt where frost had cracked through. Memory was a relentless thing. Copenhagen's skyline had disappeared hours ago, those gleaming towers of glass and ambition where Mikkel had built his empire. And Tech Solutions. 300 employees. Offices in Stockholm, Oslo, and Hamburg. The business magazines called him Denmark's tech wunderkind, the poor boy from Aalborg who'd coded his way to wealth. They didn't know what it cost. Or rather, who. The farmhouse appeared through the rain like a ghost materializing from grey mist. Whitewashed walls, red tile roof slick and gleaming, windows glowing amber against the autumn gloom. Sophie's farm. Except it wasn't just hers anymore, was it? The documents his private investigator had uncovered suggested she'd expanded, 30 hectares now, organic certification, a small farm shop that supplied restaurants as far as Aarhus. She'd thrived without him. Mikkel killed the engine and sat in the sudden silence, rain drumming a nervous rhythm on metal. His reflection in the rearview mirror showed a stranger in a Tom Ford suit, sharp jaw, carefully styled dark hair threaded with premature silver, eyes the color of Baltic ice. 34 but feeling ancient. Why are you here? The question circled like a hawk. His therapist, yes, he had one of those now, another luxury, had asked the same thing. Closure, Mikkel had said. I need to apologize. But the truth squirmed deeper, in places he didn't let therapists reach. The farmhouse door opened. She stood there, silhouetted in the doorway, and Mikkel's breath caught like he was 25 again, standing in this exact spot, promising her everything. Sophie hadn't changed, or rather, she'd changed in ways that made her more herself. Her honey-blonde hair, once meticulously styled, now hung in a practical braid over one shoulder. She wore mud-splattered jeans and a thick knit sweater the color of moss. No makeup. She didn't need it. Never had. Her face, though. God, her face registered shock, then something harder. Not anger exactly. Something more dangerous. Indifference. Mikkel grabbed the umbrella from his passenger seat and stepped into the rain. Sophie. Mikkel. Her voice carried across the yard, flat as the field surrounding them. I didn't know scarecrows wore Armani now. Despite everything, he almost smiled. That sharp tongue, the one that had made him laugh in bed, in the fields, during long winter nights when they'd had nothing but each other and dreams. It's Tom Ford, actually. Even worse. She crossed her arms, making no move to invite him in. Behind her, Mikkel caught glimpses of the farmhouse interior. Worn wooden floors, a fire crackling in the hearth, children's drawings magnetized to a refrigerator. Children's drawings. His heart lurched. Can we talk? The rain soaked through his suit jacket. He'd forgotten how Jutland weather mocked expensive fabric. Sophie studied him with those green eyes, the color of summer grass, the color of the life he'd abandoned. A muscle worked in her jaw. For a terrifying moment, he thought she'd shut the door. 5 minutes, she finally said. You're dripping on my entrance stones. They're new. He followed her inside, and the warmth hit him like a physical embrace. The farmhouse smelled of fresh bread, coffee, wood smoke, and something else, that indefinable scent of home that his penthouse in Copenhagen, with its designer furniture and skyline views, had never achieved. The kitchen was the same but different. New appliances, but the old pine table remained, scarred with years of use. Fresh flowers, late-season asters, sat in a ceramic vase. A child's yellow raincoat hung by the door, small rubber boots beneath it. Small boots. Coffee? Sophie asked, her back to him as she moved to the stove. A deflection. She'd always made coffee when conversations scared her. Please. Mikkel stood awkwardly in the kitchen where he'd once belonged, where he'd cooked breakfast before dawn, where he'd kissed flour off Sophie's nose while she baked. Now he was a visitor. An intruder in expensive shoes. Sit. He sat a day. Sophie poured 2 cups from an old percolator, set one before him without meeting his eyes, and took the chair opposite. The table felt wider than the Linford. So, she said. 7 years of silence, and you show up in October rain like you're starring in a Mads Mikkelsen film. What do you want, Mikkel? He wrapped his hands around the mug, simple ceramic, warm. I wanted to see you. To explain. Explain. Her laugh cut like ice breaking. You left a note on this table. I can't do this. I'm sorry. 9 words, Mikkel. 9 words after 3 years together. After promises. After, she stopped herself, jaw tight. I know. You don't know anything. She stood abruptly, moved to the window overlooking the dark fields. You chose Copenhagen. The company. Your ambition. That's fine. People choose. But you don't get to come back 7 years later and... A sound from the hallway froze them both. More. A child's voice. Small, uncertain, thick with sleep. Mikkel's blood turned to sleet. A little girl appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. She couldn't have been more than 6, maybe 7. She wore pajamas covered in cartoon horses, her hair a tangle of honey-blonde curls. Sophie's hair. Sophie's nose. Sophie's delicate chin. But the eyes. Dear God, the eyes. Baltic ice blue. Mikkel's eyes. The world tilted. The coffee mug slipped from his numb fingers, shattering against the floor in an explosion of ceramic and liquid. He couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Could only stare at the little girl who stared back with wide, curious eyes, his eyes, while his entire universe rearranged itself. More, who's the fancy man? The girl asked. Why's he breaking our cups? Sophie moved with the speed of a mother bear, sweeping the child into her arms. It's okay, scat. Go back to bed. Moore is just talking with an old friend. He doesn't look like Uncle Lars. No, he doesn't. Come on, back to bed. Mikkel watched, paralyzed, as Sophie carried the girl, their daughter, holy God, their daughter, down the hallway. He heard soft murmurs, a light switching off, a door closing gently. His hand shook. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. A daughter. He had a daughter. 6 years old, maybe 7. Which meant. The math was simple, brutal. Sophie had been pregnant when he left. She'd been pregnant, and he'd walked away. Footsteps returned. Sophie stood in the doorway, her face carved from stone. Her name, Mikkel managed, his voice strange and distant. What's her name? Sophie met his eyes with something that might have been pain or triumph or both. Frigga, she said quietly. Her name is Frigga. The old god's name. Love and beauty and fierce protection. She's mine. Not a question. A statement raw with wonder and horror. She's mine, Sophie corrected, each word edged. You left, Mikkel. You don't get to. You didn't tell me. His voice cracked. You were pregnant, and you didn't tell me. You left a note. Fire finally broke through her composure. You were gone before I could tell you anything. And then what? Was I supposed to call? Hey, remember me? The farm girl you abandoned? Surprise, you're going to be a father. You made your choice. I didn't know there was a choice to make. Exactly. Sophie's eyes glistened, but she didn't let the tears fall. You didn't know because you didn't stay long enough to find out. Have you ever discovered a truth that changed everything you thought you knew about your past? What would you do in Mikkel's position? Share your thoughts below. I read every comment. Mikkel couldn't move. His legs felt welded to the worn pine floor, his mind spinning through 7 years of choices, of board meetings and product launches and champagne celebrations that suddenly meant nothing. While he'd been building his empire, Sophie had been building a life. Their daughter's life. I need to see her. His voice came out hoarse. I need to. No. Sophie's word landed like a gavel. You don't get to walk in here and disrupt her world because you're having some kind of midlife crisis at 34. She's my daughter. She's my daughter. She doesn't know you. She doesn't know anything about you. Sophie grabbed a towel, knelt, and began wiping up the spilled coffee with sharp, angry movements. Do you have any idea what it would do to her? A stranger showing up, claiming to be her father. Mikkel crouched down, tried to help with the broken ceramic, but Sophie swatted his hand away. Don't. You'll cut yourself on Italian leather or whatever your gloves are made of. I don't wear gloves. Shocking. She dumped the towel in the sink, leaned against the counter with her arms crossed. In the firelight, he could see the tiny lines around her eyes, the strength in her shoulders that came from years of farm work, of raising a child alone. Why now, Mikkel? Why show up after 7 years? He stood, brushed off his trousers, an automatic gesture that felt absurd here. I've been thinking about you. About us. About the mistakes I made. Thinking. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. How philosophical. Did you think about me during board meetings? Between acquisitions? When you were on the cover of Berlingske Business? He flinched. She'd seen the articles. Every day, he said quietly. I thought about you every single day. But not enough to call. Not enough to come back. I thought, he ran a hand through his hair, destroying its careful styling. I thought you'd be better off. I was drowning, Sophie. The company was failing, investors were pulling out, I was working 20-hour days just to keep it alive. I couldn't give you what you needed. I couldn't be the man you deserved. So you decided for both of us. Her voice softened, just slightly, and somehow that was worse than her anger. You decided I couldn't handle it. That I needed some perfect version of you instead of the real, struggling one. I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself. She moved to the table, sank into her chair. From failure. From being seen as weak. From having to choose between your ambition and me. The truth of it hit like a fist. She was right. She'd always been able to see through his carefully constructed walls. Mikkel sat across from her again, the space between them charged with 7 years of unsaid words. Outside, the rain had softened to a steady whisper against the windows. Tell me about her, he said. Please. Tell me about Frigga. Sophie's expression shifted, maternal pride breaking through her armor. What do you want to know? Everything. Anything. She studied him for a long moment, as if deciding whether he'd earned even this. Finally, she sighed. She's 6. She'll be 7 in January. January 15th. Mikkel did the math backward. Conceived in April. That last month together, when everything had seemed perfect, when he'd been lying to her about how bad things were getting, when she'd been glowing with a secret she'd wanted to share but hadn't found the right moment. She loves horses, Sophie continued. Obsessed with them. We have 2, Storm and Mist. She helps me feed them every morning before school. She's fearless with animals, gentle with everything else. A smile touched her lips. She draws constantly. The fridge is covered with pictures. She wants to be an artist or a veterinarian or both. She has your talent. Mikkel remembered Sophie's sketches, the way she could capture life with just a few pencil strokes. And your stubbornness. When she decides something, there's no talking her out of it. Sophie's smile faded. She asks about her father sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. Mikkel's chest constricted. What do you tell her? The truth. That he had to leave, that he lives far away, that it's complicated. Sophie met his eyes. I never made you the villain, Mikkel. I never told her you abandoned us. I just said, you couldn't stay. The generosity of it undid him. I don't deserve that. No, she agreed. You don't. But Frigga deserves a world where her father isn't a monster. She deserves better than my bitterness. Does she? He almost couldn't ask. Does she have my name? Anderson. Nielsen Anderson. My name first. Sophie's voice firmed. She's registered as mine, legally. You have no parental rights, no legal standing. I made sure of that. The words should have stung, but Mikkel only nodded. That's fair. Fair. Sophie barked a laugh. Nothing about this is fair, Mikkel. Nothing about raising a child alone while you build your empire is fair. Nothing about her asking why other kids have fathers at school plays and birthdays is fair. Let me fix it. The words tumbled out before he could stop them. Let me be her father. Let me. You can't just fix this. Sophie stood again, paced to the window. This isn't a business deal. This isn't some problem you can solve with money or contracts or whatever it is you do in Copenhagen. This is a little girl's heart. My heart. Hearts you broke once already. I know. Mikkel stood too, moved toward her but didn't dare touch her. I know I can't fix the past. But I can be here now. I can try. Try. She turned, and the fire in her eyes could have burned down forests. Do you know what it took to survive after you left? I was pregnant, alone, running this farm with my father sick in Aalborg, barely making enough to cover the mortgage. Do you know how many nights I cried myself to sleep wondering if I'd lose everything? Sophie. I learned to deliver lambs at midnight. I learned to fix the tractor when it broke down. I learned to negotiate with suppliers while morning sickness turned my stomach inside out. I built this, she gestured around them, at the warm kitchen, the life she'd created. Without you. We survived without you. I can see that. And he could. The farm was thriving, Sophie was strong, and Frigga was clearly loved and cared for. They hadn't just survived. They'd flourished. You're incredible. You've always been incredible. Don't. Her voice cracked. Don't do that. Don't look at me like I'm some inspirational story. Like I'm brave for making the best of what you left me with. That's not what I'm angry, Mikkel. The admission seemed to cost her. I'm so angry at you. For leaving. For not calling. For not being here when she took her first steps or said her first word or had nightmares about trolls under her bed. For missing everything. What was her first word? The question hung between them. Sophie's eyes filled, and this time she let the tears come. More. Her first word was more. And I was so happy she had that I could be enough, but I was also heartbroken because she'd never say far. Because you weren't there to hear it. Mikkel felt his own throat close. I'm sorry. God, Sophie, I'm so sorry. Sorry. Doesn't give me back 7 years. Sorry doesn't give Frigga the father she should have had. I know. He did touch her then, just his hand on her shoulder, and she didn't pull away. But I'm here now. And I'm not leaving again. Not unless you tell me to. She looked at his hand, city soft, unmarked by labor, against her sweater. You don't know what you're saying. You have a company to run. A life in Copenhagen. I have a daughter in Jutland. The words felt right in a way nothing had in years. A daughter who deserves more than an absent father and child support payments. Sophie turned to face him fully. Is that what this is? Guilt? Some kind of redemption arc to make yourself feel better? Maybe it started that way, he admitted. But the moment I saw her, those eyes, Sophie, she has my eyes, everything changed. I didn't come here expecting this. I came to apologize, to see you, to maybe find some closure. But now. Now what? Now I can't imagine leaving. Now I understand what I gave up. His voice dropped. What I threw away. You can't have it back. Her words were firm, but something shifted in her expression. You can't just walk in and have us back like nothing happened. I'm not asking for us back. I'm asking for a chance to know my daughter. To be part of her life, if you'll let me. He paused. To earn your forgiveness, even if it takes another 7 years. Sophie searched his face, and Mikkel held still, letting her see whatever she needed to see. The firelight played across her features, and he remembered every constellation of freckles, every expression, the exact shade of green in her eyes. She doesn't know, Sophie said finally, about you being her father. She thinks you're just someone from my past. What do you want to do? I don't know. She moved back to the table, sat heavily. This is insane. This morning, I was worried about the new piglets and whether the cold snap would damage the kale crop. Now you're here, and everything's complicated. Understatement of the century. She rubbed her temples. She's sleeping now. In the morning, She'll wake up at 6, help with the animals, have breakfast. She's curious, Mikkel. She'll want to know everything about you. Can I be here? In the morning. Sophie's laugh was exhausted. Where else would you go? The nearest hotel is in Nibe, and you'd never find it in this rain. I can drive. Don't be ridiculous. The guest room is made up. It's where my father stays when he visits from the nursing home. She stood. But Mikkel, if you're staying, there are rules. Anything. You don't tell her who you are. Not yet. Not until I decide it's right. Her eyes hardened. And if you hurt her, if you change your mind and disappear again, I will make sure you never see her again. I don't care how many lawyers you have or how much money you throw at me. Understood. Understood. He meant it. I won't hurt her. I won't hurt either of you. Not again. Sophie studied him, then nodded toward the hallway. Guest room is the second door on the left. There are towels in the bathroom. Your fancy suit is going to wrinkle. I don't care about the suit. Good. Because at 6 tomorrow morning, you're meeting the pigs. They don't care about Tom Ford either. Despite everything, the shock, the pain, the weight of 7 years, Mikkel almost smiled. I remember the pigs. These are different pigs. Smarter. They'll probably judge you. I deserve it. Sophie walked him to the hallway, and for a moment they stood close enough that he could smell her, hay and lavender and home. Mikkel. Her voice was soft now, vulnerable in the dim light. Why did you really come back? He could have lied. Could have given her something clean and simple. But he owed her truth. Because I'm successful and miserable. Because every achievement feels hollow. Because I wake up in a penthouse overlooking the harbor and feel more alone than I did when we had nothing but this farm and each other. He met her eyes. Because I realized I climbed the mountain and left the only treasure that mattered at the bottom. Sophie's breath caught. For a heartbeat, he thought she might reach for him. But she stepped back, wrapped her arms around herself. Good night, Mikkel. Good night, Sophie. He watched her disappear into the master bedroom, the room they'd once shared, before finding the guest room. It was simple, clean, with a window overlooking the dark fields. He sat on the bed, still in his suit, and looked at his hands. These hands had signed billion-kroner deals. Had shaken hands with ministers and CEOs. Had built an empire. But they'd never held his daughter. Somewhere in this house, Frigga was sleeping. His daughter. With Sophie's smile and his eyes and 6 years of life he'd missed. Mikkel lay back on the bed, not bothering to undress, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, he would meet the pigs. Tomorrow, he would try to become the man he should have been 7 years ago. Tomorrow, he would begin the impossible work of earning back what he'd thrown away. If it wasn't already too late. Should Sophie give Mikkel a second chance? Or are some mistakes too big to forgive? What would you do if someone from your past returned wanting to make amends? Drop your thoughts below. This story is about to get even more complicated. Before we continue, don't forget to smash that like button if you're enjoying what you're seeing. Your support means the world to me and helps this channel grow. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss any of our uploads. We're building an amazing community here, and I don't want you to miss out on what's coming. And please, share this video with your friends, family, or anyone who would love this type of content. The more people we can bring into this community, the better it gets for everyone. Your engagement in the comments has been incredible, and I love reading every single one of your thoughts and theories. Keep them coming. Now, let's go in depth into the story. Mikkel woke to darkness and the sound of movement in the house. For a disoriented moment, he didn't know where he was. The mattress was too firm, the air smelled wrong, too clean, like hay and would smoke instead of the filtered sterility of his penthouse. Then the memory crashed back. Jutland. The farm. Sophie. Frigga. He checked his phone. 5:47 a.m. Outside the window, the world was still black, but he could hear Sophie moving in the kitchen, the old floorboards creaking under her familiar rhythm. He'd slept in his dress shirt and trousers, and they looked like he'd wrestled them through a hedge. Perfect. In the guest bathroom, Mikkel splashed cold water on his face and tried to look less like a man whose entire world had inverted. The mirror showed bloodshot eyes, stubble darkening his jaw, hair askew. He looked like he felt wrecked. When he emerged, The kitchen was bright with lamplight. Sophie stood at the stove, frying bacon, her hair still in last night's braid. She wore the same jeans and sweater, which meant she probably hadn't slept much either. "Coffee's fresh," she said without turning. "Mugs are in the same place." Some things hadn't changed, then. Mikkel poured himself a cup, the same ceramic mugs, the same strong, dark roast, and stood awkwardly in the kitchen that had once been his. "She'll be up any minute," Sophie said. "I usually let her sleep until 6, but she has an internal alarm clock. Very punctual, like," she stopped herself. "Like me," Mikkel finished quietly. He'd always woken at exactly 5:30, even before alarm clocks. Sophie nodded, her shoulders tense. "Listen, when she comes out, just be normal. She's going to have questions. Lots of questions. She's at that age where everything is why and how come and but what if. I can handle questions. Can you?" Sophie finally turned to face him. In the morning light, she looked exhausted, beautiful, and wary. "Can you handle it when she asks why you're here? What do you do? Where do you live? Whether you have kids?" The last question hit like a blade. "What do I say?" "The truth, but not all of it. You're an old friend visiting. You work in Copenhagen. You don't have," her voice caught. "You tell her you don't have other children." Before Mikkel could respond, a door creaked open down the hall. "More? How come you're cooking already? It's not even real morning yet." Frigga appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing her eyes, her hair a wild halo of curls. She wore different pajamas now, these covered in cartoon farm animals. When she saw Mikkel, she froze like a startled deer. Then curiosity won over shyness. "You're still here," she said, her voice sleep-thick. "The fancy cup man." Mikkel's heart hammered against his ribs. Up close, she was even more real, the scatter of freckles across her nose, the stubborn set of her jaw, the way she tilted her head exactly like he did when puzzled. He managed. "I'm sorry about breaking your cup." "It's okay. Moore says accidents happen when people are surprised." Frigga moved closer, studying him with unnerving directness. "How come you were so surprised?" "Frigga, this is Mikkel," Sophie intervened smoothly, cracking eggs into a pan. "He's an old friend of Moore's from before you were born. He's visiting for a little while." "Oh." Frigga climbed onto a chair at the table, still watching Mikkel. "How come you're so fancy? Your shirt has little buttons on the collar." Mikkel looked down at his wrinkled dress shirt. It probably cost more than a week's groceries, which suddenly felt obscene. I work in an office. In Copenhagen." "Copenhagen." Frigga's eyes went wide. "That's where the Little Mermaid statue is. We learned about her in school. Have you seen her?" "I have. Many times." "Is she really little? Casper from my class says she's tiny and disappointing." "Despite everything," Mikkel smiled. "Casper's right. She's quite small. But the story is still beautiful." "I know the story. She gives up her voice for legs, but then the prince marries someone else and she turns into sea foam. It's super sad." Frigga propped her chin in her hands. "I think she should have kept her voice and her tail. Boys aren't worth turning into foam for." Sophie made a choking sound that might have been a laugh. "Wise words. Scat. Eggs." "Yes, please. Can Mikkel help with the animals? Uncle Lars says visitors should earn their breakfast." Uncle Lars. Mikkel filed that away. Was there someone else in Sophie's life? A partner? The thought sent unexpected jealousy through his chest. "Mikkel probably doesn't have the right clothes for farm work," Sophie said diplomatically, setting plates on the table. "I'd like to help," Mikkel said. "If that's all right." Sophie gave him a long look, then shrugged. "Your funeral. Frigga, show him where your grandfather's boots are." 20 minutes later, Mikkel stood in the barn wearing borrowed boots 2 sizes too large and a canvas jacket that smelled of diesel and age. Frigga had insisted he needed a proper farm hat too, so now he wore a battered wool cap that had probably last been fashionable in 1970. "You look funny," Frigga announced cheerfully, leading him toward the pig enclosure. "But better. Less fancy." The barn was warm despite the October cold, heated by animal bodies and insulated with straw. Storm and Mist, 2 fjord horses, nickered softly from their stalls. Chickens clucked in their coop. And in the back pen, 3 enormous pigs grunted and snuffled. "That's Gerda, that's Henrik, and that's Queen Margrethe," Frigga said, pointing to each pig. "Queen Margrethe is the boss. She's named after the real queen because Moore says she has the same regal bearing, whatever that means." Mikkel looked at the massive sow, who stared back with intelligent, judgmental eyes. "She looks very regal." "She is. She's also mean if you don't feed her first." Frigga grabbed a bucket of feed. "Here, you can give it to her. Just pour it in her trough and don't get your fingers too close. She gets excited." Mikkel took the bucket, approached the pen, and poured carefully. Queen Margrethe descended on her breakfast with enthusiasm, and he barely pulled his hand back in time. "Good job." Frigga beamed at him. "You're not completely useless at farm stuff." High praise. "Uncle Lars says everyone starts useless, but some people learn." She handed him another bucket, this one for Henrik. "How come you left the farm? Moore says you used to live here, a long time ago." His hand stilled on the bucket. I had to work in Copenhagen. My job was there." "But how come you couldn't do both? Copenhagen's not that far. Uncle Lars drives to Aalborg all the time for his veterinary supplies, and that's almost as far." From the mouths of children. The question he'd never properly answered, now delivered with devastating simplicity by his 6-year-old daughter. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," Mikkel said carefully. "Sometimes we think we have to choose between things, when maybe we could have figured out a way to have both." "That's silly." Frigga took the bucket back, her small face serious. "My teacher says we should always try to solve problems before giving up. Did you try to solve the problem?" "No," Mikkel admitted. "I didn't try hard enough." "Oh." She considered this while feeding the chickens, scattering grain with practiced ease. "Do you wish you tried harder?" "Every single day." Frigga looked up at him, and in her eyes, his eyes, he saw an understanding far beyond her years. "It's okay. Moore says we can't change the past, but we can change what we do next. That's what matters." The wisdom of it, delivered so casually by this small person he'd never met until yesterday, hit him like a freight train. "Your Moore is very smart." "I know. She knows everything. Except how to fix the tractor, that's why Uncle Lars comes over." Frigga finished with the chickens, then grabbed his hand, unself-consciously, the way children do, and tugged him toward the horses. "Come on, Storm and Mist are the best part. You can help me brush them." Her hand in his felt impossibly small, impossibly trusting. Mikkel's throat closed. He let her lead him to the horse stalls, where 2 sturdy fjord horses waited with typical Norwegian patience. "Storm is the grey one, Mist is the white one," Frigga explained, already grabbing brushes from a hook. "They're sisters. Moore got them when I was 4, so they're still kind of young. I get to ride Mist sometimes, but only with Moore watching." She demonstrated the proper brushing technique, and Mikkel found himself falling into the rhythm of it, long, smooth strokes along Storm's flank, the horse leaning into the touch. He'd done this before, years ago, with Sophie's old horse, Magnus. Some motions, the body never forgot. "You're good at this," Frigga observed. "How come, if you've been in Copenhagen?" "I used to work with horses. A long time ago." "Here? On this farm?" "Yes." "So you were here when Moore was younger?" Frigga's brush moved in steady circles on Mist's neck. "What was she like?" Mikkel smiled, remembering. "She was brave. And funny. She used to race the old tractor against my motorcycle, and she'd always win because she knew every bump in the road." "Moore has a motorcycle." Frigga's eyes went huge. "She did. A little red one. She sold it when," he stopped himself. "When she got pregnant. When she needed the money." "When what?" "When she needed money for the farm," he finished. "To buy equipment." Frigga nodded, accepting this. Being a farmer costs a lot. That's why Moore works super hard. She does the farm and the shop and the delivery to restaurants and everything. Uncle Lars says she's a superhero, but without a cape. Uncle Lars again. Uncle Lars helps a lot. Mikkel tried to keep his voice casual. Aha. He fixes things when they break and helps with the big animals when they're sick. He's a vet. His office is in Nibe. Frigga switched to brushing Mist's manner. Sometimes he brings his daughter Emma, and we play together. Emma's 8, so she's bossy, but nice bossy. Relief and guilt warred in Mikkel's chest. Not a partner, then. A friend. A support system that Sophie had built while he was gone. Your Moore is lucky to have good friends. I guess. But I think Uncle Lars likes Moore in a grown-up way. He gets all weird and smiley when she laughs. Frigga wrinkled her nose. Grown-ups are so obvious. Mikkel's hand stilled on the brush. Does your Moore like him back? In a grown-up way? Frigga shrugged. I dunno. She says she's too busy for romance, which is what people say in movies before they fall in love. But she never looks at him the way people look at each other in the good parts of movies, you know. He shouldn't have been asking a 6-year-old about her mother's love life. But he was desperate to know, and Frigga was disarmingly honest. What way is that? Like they're seeing magic. Like the other person is the most interesting thing in the whole world. She finished with Mist and put the brush away. My friend Ida's parents look at each other like that all the time. It's gross but also kind of nice. Yeah, Mikkel said softly. It is. They finished with the horses, and Frigga led him back outside where dawn had finally broken over the fields. The sky was that particular shade of Danish grey-blue, clouds racing toward the Linford, the October air sharp with coming winter. Look. Frigga pointed to the vegetable garden, where the last of the season's kale stood in neat rows. That's Moore's restaurant garden. She grows special vegetables for fancy restaurants in Aalborg and Aarhus. Chefs pay lots of money for organic purple kale. Is that what you want to do? Mikkel asked. Be a farmer like your Moore. Frigga considered this seriously. Maybe. Or maybe a veterinarian. Or an artist. Or all three. She looked up at him. What do you do in Copenhagen? In your office? I run a technology company. We make software, computer programs, that help other businesses work better. Like apps. Exactly like apps. That sounds boring. Frigga said it without malice. Just honesty. No offense. Mikkel laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. None taken. It can be boring. But it can also be like solving puzzles. I like puzzles. Me too. Moore and I do jigsaw puzzles in winter. We did a 1,000-piece one of Copenhagen last year. It had the Little Mermaid in it, but she was tiny. Just like Casper said. She skipped ahead toward the house. Come on, breakfast is probably ready, and Moore makes the best eggs. She puts dill in them. Do you like dill? I love dill. Good. If you didn't, I was going to think you were weird. Inside, the kitchen smelled of coffee and bacon and fresh bread. Sophie had set the table, 3 places, like a family. She glanced up when they entered, and something flickered across her face at the sight of Mikkel in farm clothes, Frigga chattering beside him. The pigs approved. Sophie asked. Queen Margrethe was especially welcoming, Mikkel said dryly. Frigga giggled. She almost bit his fingers. She did not almost bite them. She thought about it, decided I wasn't worth the effort. Wise pig, Sophie murmured, but there was the ghost of a smile on her lips. They sat down to breakfast, and for a surreal moment, Mikkel felt like he'd stepped into an alternate timeline, one where he hadn't left, where mornings like this had been his life for the past 7 years. Frigga narrated between bites of eggs and bacon, telling Sophie about teaching Mikkel to feed the pigs, how Storm had been extra affectionate this morning, how she decided Mikkel wasn't completely useless. High praise indeed, Sophie said, her eyes meeting Mikkel's with something that might have been amusement or pain or both. How come Mikkel can't stay longer? Frigga asked suddenly. If he's visiting, he should stay for a while. That's what Uncle Lars does when he visits. He stays for dinner and helps with evening chores too. Sophie's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Frigga, Mikkel has work. Actually, Mikkel interrupted, surprising himself, I can stay. For a few days, at least. Maybe a week. He looked at Sophie, seeing the alarm in her eyes, but pushed forward. If that's all right. I have a capable team. They can manage without me. A week. Frigga bounced in her chair. You can help with the harvest then. We're bringing in the last of the root vegetables this weekend. And you can come to my school thing on Friday. We're doing presentations about our families. The room went very, very quiet. Scat, Sophie said carefully. Mikkel might not want to. I'd love to, Mikkel said. He was moving too fast. He knew it, but he couldn't stop. 7 years of absence demanded something reckless. If your Moore says it's okay. Frigga turned pleading eyes on Sophie. Please, Moore? It would be so cool to have a visitor from Copenhagen. Casper's dad is a dentist, which is super boring. Sophie looked at Mikkel, and a whole conversation happened in that look. Anger, fear, hope, warning, and something else he couldn't quite name. Fine, she said finally. But you follow my rules. And you earn your keep. This isn't a vacation. Understood. Yay. Frigga jumped up, ran around the table, and hugged Sophie, then, without hesitation, hugged Mikkel too. Her small arms around his neck, her hair smelling of hay and some kind of strawberry shampoo, the trust in the gesture, it unmade him completely. When she pulled back and skipped off to get ready for school, Mikkel sat very still, his throat working. You're playing with fire, Sophie said quietly. She's going to get attached. Maybe I want her to get attached. And when you leave, when you go back to your real life. This is my real life, Mikkel said, and meant it. This is the life I should have had. Should have had and can have are different things. Sophie stood, began clearing plates with sharp, controlled movements. You've been here less than 24 hours. You don't know what you're saying. I know. You don't know anything. The dishes clattered in the sink. You don't know what it's like to be up at midnight with a sick child. You don't know what it's like to choose between fixing the tractor or buying new shoes. You don't know what it's like to watch her draw pictures of families with fathers and pretend it doesn't break your heart every single time. Then teach me. Mikkel stood too, moved toward her. Let me learn. Let me be here. For a week? And then what? I don't know yet. But I know I can't walk away again. Sophie turned to face him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. You're going to break her heart. Or mine. Or both. Or maybe, Mikkel said softly, I'll finally get it right. Before Sophie could respond, Frigga called from her room. More. I can't find my good school shoes. Sophie wiped her eyes quickly. Under your bed, where you always leave them. She looked at Mikkel. 1 week. That's what you get. After that, we talk about what this really means. 1 week, he agreed. But he already knew. 1 week wouldn't be enough. A lifetime wouldn't be enough to make up for what he'd missed. But maybe, if Sophie let him, he could start trying. Mikkel is diving in fast. Maybe too fast. Is he being genuine, or is he romanticizing farm life? Will his presence heal old wounds or create new ones? Share your predictions below. The real test is coming. The week unfolded like a dream Mikkel kept waiting to wake from, but it stayed stubbornly real. Monday brought rain and the rhythmic work of repairing fence posts. Tuesday, he learned the ancient art of coaxing the temperamental tractor to life. It required cursing in exactly the right tone, apparently. Wednesday, Sophie showed him the farm's books, not trusting exactly, but testing. Thursday, Frigga taught him to collect eggs without startling the hens. By Friday morning, the day of Frigga's school presentation, Mikkel's hands bore actual blisters. His back ached in places he'd forgotten existed. His expensive clothes had been abandoned for borrowed jeans and wool sweaters that smelled of wood smoke. And he'd never felt more alive. You're going to embarrass me, Frigga announced at breakfast, eyeing his outfit critically. You look too much like a farmer now. I told everyone you were fancy. I can change back into my suit, Mikkel offered. No. That's worse. Just try to look normal fancy. Like a dad who has an office job but also knows about pigs. The word dad landed casually from her lips, and Mikkel's chest constricted. Sophie's knuckles whitened around her coffee mug. I'll do my best, he managed. Nibe School was a low-slung brick building surrounded by playing fields, exactly the kind of place Mikkel had attended as a child before his mother moved them to Aalborg. Children swarmed the entrance, bright coats against the grey morning, voices carrying in the crisp air. Frigga grabbed both their hands, Mikkel's left, Sophie's right, and tugged them toward the building. My classroom is upstairs. We decorated it with family trees. Mine has a really big branch for more because she's basically a whole tree by herself. Sophie's fingers tightened on Frija's hand, but she said nothing. The classroom was warm chaos. Children's artwork covering every wall, an alphabet banner sagging slightly in one corner, the smell of poster paint and pencil shavings. A young teacher with kind eyes and a hijab greeted them at the door. "You must be Frija's mother," she said, shaking Sophie's hand. "I'm Amira Hansen. Frija talks about you constantly. The farm, the horses, your cooking. You're quite the hero." "Just a mother," Sophie said, but she smiled. "And you are?" Amira turned to Mikkel. "Mikkel Anderson. A family friend. Visiting from Copenhagen." "Ah. The fancy man with the office." Amira's eyes crinkled with amusement. "Frija's been very excited about your visit. Please, find seats. We're about to begin." The presentations were exactly what you'd expect from 6-year-olds, earnest, rambling, occasionally losing the plot entirely. Casper, the dentist's son, spent 5 minutes talking about tooth decay instead of his family. Emma, Uncle Lars's daughter, Mikkel realized with a jolt, discussed her father's veterinary work with disturbing anatomical detail. Then Frija's turn came. She stood at the front of the class with her poster board, a cheerful explosion of drawings and photos. There was Sophie at the farm stand, Sophie on the tractor, the horses, the pigs. And in the corner, a new addition that made Mikkel's breath catch, a careful drawing of a man in a suit holding a coffee cup. Him. Drawn in the last few days and added to her family tree. "This is my Moor, Sophie," Frija began, pointing to the largest photo. "She runs our farm all by herself, which Uncle Lars says is like being a superhero but harder because superheroes don't have to deal with mortgage payments." Soft laughter from the parents. "She grows vegetables for fancy restaurants and takes care of animals, and fixes everything that breaks. She's really strong. One time she carried a whole bale of hay by herself, and another time she scared away a fox that was trying to eat our chickens just by yelling at it." Sophie's face had gone pink, but she was smiling. "I don't have a dad in my family," Frija continued matter-of-factly, and the room went carefully quiet. "He had to leave before I was born because of work stuff. Moore says sometimes grown-ups make hard choices. But this week, my Moore's old friend Mikkel came to visit from Copenhagen." She pointed to her drawing. "That's him. He works with computers, but he also knows about farms because he used to live on ours a long time ago. He's teaching me about solving problems and trying harder, and he's really bad at collecting eggs but good with the pigs. Queen Margrethe likes him." Parents chuckled. Mikkel felt every eye in the room on him. "Anyway," Frija concluded, "family is the people who show up and help, even if they're not there all the time. That's what Moore says. And our family is small but really good." The end. The class applauded. Amira beamed. "Beautiful, Frija. Thank you for sharing." As Frija returned to her seat, a woman beside Sophie leaned over, an elegant blonde in veterinary scrubs. "Your daughter is wonderful. And brave, talking about her father like that. Not all children could." "Thank you," Sophie said quietly. "She's stronger than I am." "Lars mentioned you had a visitor this week," the woman continued. "I'm Sina, by the way. Lars's sister. Emma's mother." Relief flooded through Mikkel. Not a romantic partner, a colleague sister. "The fancy man," Sina said, offering her hand to Mikkel with undisguised curiosity. "Emma says you've been helping at the farm. That's kind of you." "It's been my pleasure." "Lars mentioned you're the ex-boyfriend." Sina's directness was startling. "The one from Copenhagen. That must be complicated." "Sina," Sophie warned. "What?" "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking." She smiled warmly. "Lars will be glad to hear you're just visiting. He's been working up the courage to ask Sophie to dinner for 2 years now." Sina. "Fine, fine. I'll mind my business." She stood as the presentations concluded. But for what it's worth, Frija seems happy this week. Happier than usual. Children know things we don't. After school, they walked Frija back to the car through the autumn sunshine that had finally broken through the clouds. Frija chatted about how Casper said her presentation was actually interesting, and how Emma invited her for a sleepover next weekend, and how the fancy man drawing looked exactly right. "You made me too tall," Mikkel said, studying the drawing she'd insisted on bringing home. UAI tall. You're like a tree. A fancy tree in a fancy forest. Copenhagen is definitely a concrete forest. EU. I like our farm better. Trees should be real. They were almost to the car when a veterinary van pulled up beside them. A man emerged, tall, sandy-haired, with a kind of practical handsomeness that came from outdoor work and easy smiles. He wore muddy boots and carried a medical bag. Sophie. Perfect timing. I was just heading to your place. Got a call about your cow. Freya's been limping, Sophie confirmed. I was going to call you this afternoon. No need, I'm here now. The man's eyes landed on Mikkel, and something shifted in his expression. You must be the visitor. I'm Lars Moller. Mikkel Anderson. They shook hands. Lars's grip was firm, slightly too firm. Uncle Lars. Frigga launched herself at him. Guess what? My presentation was really good, and Mikkel came, and Casper said it was interesting. That's wonderful, sunshine. Lars ruffled her hair, but his eyes never left Mikkel's face. So you're the Copenhagen businessman. Sina mentioned you've been helping out this week. Trying to help. Trying. Lars smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Farm work is harder than it looks. Most city people don't last more than a day or two. Lars, Sophie said warningly. What? I'm just making conversation. He turned to Sophie, and his expression softened genuinely. I'll follow you back, check on Freya. Should only take an hour or so. At the farm, Mikkel watched Lars work. The man was competent, gentle with the limping cow, talking to the animal in low, soothing tones while he examined her hoof. Professional. Kind. Exactly the kind of man who would have been there for Sophie these past 7 years. Stone bruise, Lars announced, cleaning the hoof carefully. Not serious, but she'll need to stay off it for a few days. I'll leave antibiotics just in case. Thank you, Sophie said. Send me the bill. Don't be ridiculous. What are friends for? Lars packed his equipment, then paused. Actually, while I'm here, that dinner invitation. I know you've been busy, but Emma's been asking if Frigga can come over, and I thought maybe we could make it a proper evening. You and me. Adult conversation. Maybe that new restaurant in Aalborg. Sophie froze. Lars, It's fine if you say no, Lars said quickly. I just thought, with your visitor leaving soon, you might want something to look forward to. I'm not leaving soon, Mikkel said. The words came out harder than intended. Lars turned to him, eyebrows raised. No? I thought you were here for a week. Plans change. Do they? Not a question. Lars looked between Mikkel and Sophie, understanding dawning. I see. Well. He shouldered his bag. Sophie, think about dinner. No pressure. And Mikkel, he extended his hand again. Good luck with the farm work. It's a hard life. Not everyone's cut out for it long term. After he left, silence settled over the barn. Frigga had gone inside to do homework. It was just Mikkel and Sophie and 7 years of unspoken things. He's in love with you, Mikkel said. He's a good friend. That's not an answer. Sophie turned on him, eyes blazing. What do you want me to say? Yes, Lars has feelings for me. Yes, he's been here, consistently, helping with everything, being kind to Frigga. Yes, he's a good man who hasn't run away when things got hard. Are you in love with him? That's not fair. Answer the question, Sophie. No. The word exploded from her. No, I'm not in love with him. I'm not in love with anyone because I can't. Her voice broke. I can't let myself. Because the last time I loved someone, he left me pregnant and alone, and I can't survive that again. The truth of it hung between them like smoke. I'm not leaving, Mikkel said. You say that now. You've been here a week. 1 week, Mikkel. Playing farmer, bonding with Frigga, pretending this is your life. But it's not. Your life is in Copenhagen. Your company. Your penthouse. Your real world. This is my real world. Frigga is. Don't. Sophie held up a hand. Don't say it. Don't tell her who you are. Not yet. Not when you're still deciding if you can actually do this. I've already decided. Have you? Sophie moved closer, her voice dropping to something fierce and fragile. Have you thought about what it means? Really thought about it? Because it's not just visiting on weekends or sending money. It's being here at 3 a.m. when she has nightmares. It's parent-teacher conferences and scraped knees and the flu and homework battles. It's her teenage years when she'll hate us both. It's 30 more years of showing up, Mikkel. Every single day. I know. You don't know. You've had 7 years of freedom. 7 years of building whatever you wanted without compromise. Can you really give that up? I already gave up everything that mattered, Mikkel said. I've been living half a life in Copenhagen, Sophie. Successful and empty. Coming here, seeing Frigga, seeing you, it's like waking up from a 7-year coma. Pretty words. But her voice wavered. Not words. Truth. He took a breath. I called my board yesterday. Told them I'm relocating. We can run operations from anywhere. That's the beauty of tech companies. I'll keep an apartment in Copenhagen for meetings, but my base will be here. In Jutland. Sophie stared at him. You what? I'm not asking to move back in. I'm not asking for us to be together. I'm just asking to be here. For Frigga. To be her father, if you'll let me. You can't just append your entire life. Watch me. Mikkel pulled out his phone, showed her emails, documentation. I've already started looking at properties in Nibe. Small places, nothing ostentatious. Somewhere I can work remotely and still be 15 minutes away. This is insane. This is me trying. Like Frigga said, like you taught her, we can't change the past, but we can change what we do next. Sophie's hands trembled. And if it doesn't work? If you hate it here after a month? If being a father is harder than you think? Then I'll hate it and do it anyway. Because that's what parents do, right? They show up even when it's hard. You're asking me to trust you. Her voice was barely a whisper. After everything. I'm asking you to let me earn your trust. One day at a time. One decision at a time. For as long as it takes. Sophie closed her eyes, and when she opened them, they were wet. She's going to ask questions. About why you're staying. About who you really are. Then maybe, Mikkel said carefully, it's time to tell her the truth. I'm terrified. Me too. What if she's angry? What if she hates me for not telling her sooner? What if she's happy? What if having a father, even one who's 7 years late, is exactly what she's been waiting for? Sophie laughed, sharp and painful. You always were an optimist. Someone has to be. They stood in the barn as the afternoon light slanted through the slats, gilding the hay dust gold. Outside, they could hear Frigga singing to the horses, her voice high and clear and unself-conscious. Okay, Sophie said finally. Okay. We'll tell her. Together. Tomorrow. Let her have tonight just being happy. Before everything changes. Everything already changed, Mikkel said softly. The moment I drove down that road. The moment I saw her. There's no going back now. No, Sophie agreed. There isn't. That night, after Frigga went to bed, Mikkel and Sophie sat at the kitchen table with glasses of wine and years of silence to unpack. I was scared, Sophie said, turning her glass slowly. When I found out I was pregnant. Terrified. You'd been gone 2 months, and I kept telling myself you'd call, you'd come back, but you never did. And then I took the test, and it was positive, and I was so angry. At you, at myself, at the universe. I'm sorry. Let me finish. She took a breath. I thought about calling you. I picked up the phone 100 times. But every time, I thought, what if he comes back out of obligation? What if he resents me? What if he resents her? I couldn't bear the thought of you looking at our child like she was a burden. I would never. I didn't know that. You'd left me with a note, Mikkel. A note. How was I supposed to trust that you'd stay for something as hard as a baby? She wiped her eyes. So I decided I'd do it alone. I'd prove I didn't need you. And for 7 years, I have. But seeing Frigga's face light up around you this week, seeing her have what she's always wanted, it's killing me. Because I kept this from both of you. And I don't know if that makes me strong or cruel. It makes you a mother, Mikkel said. Protecting your child, the only way you knew how. Maybe. Or maybe I was protecting myself. She met his eyes. Because if you came back and left again, I don't think I'd survive it. And I definitely know Frigga wouldn't. I won't leave again. You can't promise that. I can. I am. Mikkel reached across the table, covered her hand with his. I'm promising you, Sophie. On everything I have, everything I am. I'm not leaving. Not this time. Not ever. She looked at their hands, hers work roughened, his blistered from new labor. Tomorrow changes everything. Tomorrow we give our daughter her father. Finally. Are you ready for that? Really ready? Mikkel thought of Frigga's laugh, her questions, the way she'd unself-consciously taken his hand. The way she'd drawn him into her family tree like he'd always belonged there. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. Saturday morning arrived with frost silvering the fields and a sky so clear it hurt to look at. Mikkel woke early, not from habit anymore, but from nerves that sang through his bones like electrical current. Today, everything changed. Today, he would tell his daughter who he really was. If she'd still want him after. In the kitchen, Sophie was already up, standing at the window with her hands wrapped around a mug. She hadn't tied back her hair yet, and it fell around her shoulders in waves that caught the early light. She looked young and terrified. I didn't sleep, she said without turning. Me neither. I kept thinking of all the ways this could go wrong. She could be angry. She could feel betrayed. She could be happy, Mikkel said, coming to stand beside her. She could finally have the answer to the question she's been asking her whole life. Or she could hate us both for lying. We didn't lie. We just waited for the right time. Sophie finally looked at him. Is this the right time? How do we know? We don't. But we're doing it together. That has to count for something. The floorboards creaked overhead, small feet hitting the floor, the sound of Frigga's morning routine. In a few minutes, she'd come bounding into the kitchen, full of questions about what they'd do today, whether they could ride the horses, if Mikkel would help with the weekend chores. In a few minutes, everything would change. I'll make her favorite breakfast, Sophie said, moving toward the stove with forced purpose. Pancakes with blueberries. That's good, right? Good news deserves pancakes. Sophie. I know. I'm stalling. Her hands shook as she pulled out the mixing bowl. Just let me be nervous, okay? Let me be terrified that I'm about to hurt my baby girl. You're giving her a gift. Am I? Or am I giving her a complicated mess to navigate for the rest of her life? Before Mikkel could answer, Frigga appeared in the doorway, her hair a wild halo, wearing mismatched pajamas, one-leg horses, one-leg farm animals, because apparently she'd gotten dressed in the dark. More. Mikkel. Guess what I dreamed? She climbed onto her chair at the table, eyes bright with sleep and excitement. I dreamed that Queen Margrethe could talk, and she told me she wanted to run for actual Queen of Denmark, and I was her campaign manager. We had posters and everything. Despite the tension, Mikkel smiled. Did she win? Obviously. She's very regal. The people loved her. Frigga noticed Sophie at the stove. Pancakes? It's not my birthday. How come we're having special breakfast? Sophie's back stiffened, but she kept her voice light. Can't Amor make pancakes just because? I guess. But you usually only make them for birthdays or when something big is happening. Frigga's eyes narrowed with 6-year-old perception. Is something big happening? Mikkel and Sophie exchanged glances. The moment stretched, fragile as spun glass. Actually, Sophie said, setting down the mixing bowl and coming to the table, there is something we need to talk to you about. Something important. Frigga's excitement dimmed to wariness. Am I in trouble? Because I didn't mean to leave the gate open on Wednesday, and Henrik didn't actually escape, he just thought about it. You're not in trouble, scat. Sophie sat down, and Mikkel did too, the three of them around the old pine table. This is about something else. Something I should have told you before. Okay. Frigga's voice got small. In Mikkel's experience, children always knew when big conversations were coming. They could sense the emotional weather changing. Sophie reached across the table, took Frija's hands. You know how you sometimes ask about your father? About why he's not here? Frija nodded slowly. And I've always told you that he had to leave before you were born. That it was complicated. That it wasn't your fault. I know, more. You tell me all the time it's not my fault. Frija's eyes glistened. Even though sometimes I wonder if maybe it is. If maybe I was the complicated part. Mikkel's heart cracked down the middle. Frija, no. The thing is, Sophie continued, her voice thick, your father didn't leave because of you. He didn't even know about you. He left because grown-ups sometimes make mistakes. Because we get scared and make bad choices. I don't understand. Sophie looked at Mikkel, and he saw the question in her eyes. Can you do this? Are you really ready? He nodded. Frija, Mikkel said, and his voice came out rough with emotion. What your more is trying to say is, I'm your father. I'm the one who left. I'm the one who's been gone for 7 years. The kitchen went absolutely silent. Even the old house seemed to hold its breath. Frija looked at him, her face a study in confusion. You? But you're Mikkel. You're Moore's fancy friend from Copenhagen. I'm also your father. I lived here with your Moore, before you were born. We loved each other very much. But I got scared about my work, about failing, about not being good enough, and I left. I didn't know your Moore was pregnant. I didn't know about you. But Frija's brain was working overtime. You could see it in her eyes. But you came back. This week. You came to visit. I came to apologize to your Moore. I came because I'd made a terrible mistake, and I wanted to make it right. But I didn't know about you. And then I saw you, and, his voice broke. And you have my eyes. And my stubborn chin. And you're the most amazing person I've ever met. Frija pulled her hands from Sophie's, stared at both of them. So this whole week, you've been my father? And nobody told me. I wanted to tell you right away, Mikkel said quickly. But your Moore was right to wait. She wanted to make sure I was serious. That I wasn't going to leave again. Are you? Frija's question was small but devastating. Going to leave again? No. Never. I'm staying here, in Jutland. I'm buying a house in Nibe. I'm going to be here for every birthday, every school play, every single day you'll let me. Frija's face did something complicated, hurt and hope and anger and confusion all warring for dominance. But you missed everything. You missed when I was a baby. You missed my first day of school. You missed when I learned to ride mist. You missed everything. I know. Mikkel felt tears on his face and didn't bother wiping them. And I'm so sorry. I can never get those years back. I can never fix what I broke. But I'm here now, and I want to be here for everything that comes next. If you'll let me. Why should I let you? And there it was, the anger, finally surfacing. You left Moore. You made her do everything alone. Uncle Lars says she's a superhero, but maybe she wouldn't have had to be a superhero if you just stayed. You're absolutely right. Frija blinked. I'm right. Completely right. Your Moore is a superhero. And she shouldn't have had to be. I should have been here. I should have been brave enough to stay and face my fears instead of running away. Mikkel leaned forward, meeting those Baltic ice eyes, his eyes, directly. I made the worst mistake of my life when I left. And I know I can't make it up to you. But I want to try. I want to be your father, if you'll have me. Frija looked at Sophie. Moore? Are you okay with this? With him being here? Sophie's face was wet with tears. I'm scared, scat. I'm scared of getting hurt again. I'm scared of trusting him. But I'm also hopeful. Because you deserve a father. And because maybe, just maybe, people can change. People can grow up and become brave. So what happens now? Frija asked. Do I call you Dad? Do we all live together? Do I get 2 Christmases like Casper when his parents divorced? Despite everything, Sophie laughed wetly. We're figuring it out as we go, scat. But for now, Mikkel, your father, will have his own place nearby. He'll visit a lot. He'll be part of our lives. And someday, maybe Maybe we'll figure out the rest. What rest? Sophie looked at Mikkel, and something passed between them, fragile and new and terrifying. The rest is for grown-ups to worry about. Frigga sat back in her chair, processing. The kitchen clock ticked. Outside, Storm whinnied, impatient for breakfast. Then Frigga stood up, walked around the table, and stopped in front of Mikkel. "Stand up," she commanded. He stood. She studied him for a long moment, this small, fierce person who was his daughter. Then, without warning, she wrapped her arms around his waist and buried her face in his sweater. "You smell like the barn," she said, muffled. "And coffee. And something else. Something that feels like home, but different." Mikkel's arms came around her carefully, like she was made of glass. "Is that okay?" "I don't know yet." Her voice was small but honest. "I'm really mad at you. But I'm also really happy you're here. Is that weird?" "It's not weird at all." He looked at Sophie over Frigga's head, and she was smiling through tears. "Feelings can be complicated. You can be mad and happy at the same time. Like more when I track Mud inside, but she's also happy I helped with the animals." "Exactly like that." Frigga pulled back, looked up at him. "Okay. You can be my father. But you're on probation." "Probation?" "It's what they said on that police show Uncle Lars watches when he thinks I'm not listening. It means you have to prove you're good. And if you mess up, you're in big trouble." "That's fair. What are my probation rules?" Frigga considered this seriously. "You have to show up when you say you will. You have to help with chores without complaining. You have to be nice to more. And you have to let me teach you things, even if you already know them, because that's what kids do with their dads." "I can do all of that." "And you have to come to my birthday party in January. It's very important. I'm turning 7. I wouldn't miss it for anything in the world." "Okay." She nodded decisively, then turned to Sophie. "Can we still have pancakes? All this talking made me hungry." Sophie laughed, really laughed, and it sounded like hope. "Yes, scat. We can definitely still have pancakes." The weekend unfolded with a strange, cautious joy. Frigga appointed herself Mikkel's supervisor, making sure he did every chore correctly and quizzing him constantly on farm facts. She also insisted he carry her on his shoulders to check on the pigs because that's what dads in movies do. On Sunday afternoon, Lars stopped by with Emma for the promised playdate. He took one look at the scene, Mikkel pushing Frigga on the tire swing, Sophie watching from the porch with something like contentment on her face, and understood immediately. "So," he said to Sophie while the girls played, "he's staying." "He's staying." Lars nodded slowly, pain flickering across his honest face before acceptance settled in. "She looks happy. That's what matters." "Lars, I'm sorry." "Don't." He smiled, and it was genuine if sad. "You can't help who you love. Or who you've never stopped loving." He glanced at Mikkel. "He'd better be good to you both. Or he'll have me to answer to." "He will be," Sophie said with quiet certainty. "Or I'll kill him myself." "That's my girl." Lars squeezed her shoulder. "I'll always be here, you know. As a friend. For whatever you need." "I know. Thank you, Lars. For everything." After they left, Frigga convinced Mikkel to help her draw a new family tree, this one including him, properly positioned. She made his branch extra long because you have a lot of catching up to do. That evening, after Frigga went to bed, Mikkel and Sophie sat on the porch with blankets and hot chocolate, watching the stars emerge over the fields. "She called you far today," Sophie said softly, "when you were helping her with the horses. Did you notice?" "I noticed." Mikkel's voice was rough. "I didn't want to make a big deal of it in case she took it back." "She won't take it back. Once Frigga decides something, that's it. She's like you that way. Stubborn. Loyal." Sophie turned to look at him. "She's going to hold you to those promises, you know. Children remember everything." "Good. I want to be held accountable." He set down his mug. "Sophie, I need to say something." "That sounds ominous." "It's not. Or maybe it is. I don't know." He took a breath. "I love you. I never stopped loving you. I know it's too soon to say that, I know we have years of work ahead of us, but I need you to know, I didn't come back for closure. I came back because some part of me has been trying to get back here for 7 years. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. You hurt me. So badly I didn't think I'd survive it. I know. And I don't know if I can trust you yet. Not completely. Not with my whole heart. I understand. But, she continued, and her hand found his in the darkness, I'm willing to try. For Frigga. And maybe, for us. That's all I'm asking for. A chance to prove I've grown up. That I'm not the scared boy who ran away anymore. Who are you now? Mikkel looked out at the farm, the fields he'd once known by heart, the barn where he'd learned the meaning of honest work, the house where he'd found and lost and found again everything that mattered. I'm a father, he said. And I'm the man who's going to spend the rest of his life showing up. For you. For Frigga. For this life we're building together. Sophie leaned her head on his shoulder, and it felt like coming home. You're going to hate the winter. You've gone soft in Copenhagen. I'll learn to love winter again. And the spring mud. And the summer heat. And the autumn rain that never stops. I'll love all of it. Because it's ours. Ours, Sophie repeated, testing the word. I like the sound of that. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, the ancient constellations that had watched over this land for millennia. Inside, Frigga slept peacefully, dreaming whatever dream 6-year-olds dreamed, probably something about pigs running for office or horses learning to fly. And for the first time in 7 years, Mikkel felt complete. 3 months later, the January snow fell soft and thick over the farm, transforming it into something from a fairy tale. Inside the warm kitchen, chaos reigned, the good kind of chaos that comes with birthday parties and small children and too much sugar. Frigga, resplendent in a paper crown she'd made herself, presided over a table full of friends. Casper was there, and Emma, and half her class from Nibe school. The kitchen counter groaned under the weight of chocolate cake, traditional Danish butter cookies, and hot chocolate with mountains of whipped cream. Make a wish, scat. Sophie called, lighting the 7 candles. Frigga closed her eyes, her face serious with the weight of birthday wishes. Then she opened them, grinned, and blew out every candle in one breath. What did you wish for? Emma asked. Can't tell or it won't come true, Frigga said wisely. But she looked at Mikkel and Sophie, standing together by the stove, and her smile said everything. Mikkel had kept every promise. He'd bought a small house in Nibe, close enough to visit daily but far enough to give them all space to adjust. He'd restructured his company, delegating daily operations so he could work remotely. He showed up for every school event, every bedtime story, every morning chore. Some days were hard. Some days, Frigga tested him, pushing to see if he'd leave. Some days, Sophie's walls went back up, old hurt surfacing without warning. But they worked through it, together, with patience and honesty and the kind of love that grows deeper when it's been broken and carefully mended. Speech. Casper's father called out, and the other parents laughed. Frigga stood on her chair, imperious as her namesake queen. Thank you for coming to my birthday. I'm 7 now, which is basically almost grown up. I'd like to thank my Moor for being the best superhero ever, and my Far for finally figuring out where he's supposed to be. Laughter rippled through the room, warm and accepting. And I'd like to thank Queen Margrethe the pig for being an excellent advisor, and Storm and Mist for being good listeners, and all my friends for not thinking it's weird that I talk to animals. More laughter. The end. Let's have cake. As the party dissolved into joyful chaos, Mikkel found himself on the porch with Sophie, stealing a moment of quiet. The snow had stopped, and the world outside was pristine white. She's happy, Sophie said. So am I. Really? No regrets about leaving Copenhagen? About the quiet life? Mikkel pulled her close, and she came willingly now, fitting against him like she'd never left. My life in Copenhagen wasn't quiet. It was empty. This, he gestured at the party inside, the farm, the life they were building. This is everything. This is worth all of it. Even Queen Margrethe. Especially Queen Margrethe. She's grown on me. Sophie laughed, then turned serious. I love you, you know. I didn't want to. I fought it for months. But I love you, Mikkel Andersen. You frustrating, stubborn, reformed workaholic man. I love you too, Sophie Nielsen. You brilliant, fierce, too forgiving woman. He kissed her forehead. Thank you for giving me a second chance. For letting me be Frija's father. For letting me come home. Thank you for coming back. For doing the hard work. For showing up. Inside, Frija called for them. More. Far. You're missing the cake. And Casper is trying to give Queen Margrethe a piece, which seems like a bad idea. They headed back inside, back to the warmth and noise and beautiful chaos of family. As Mikkel passed the refrigerator, he stopped to look at the newest drawing magnet there, Frija's latest family portrait. 3 figures holding hands in front of a red-roofed farmhouse. More, Far, and me. Under it, in careful 6-year-old handwriting, my family is small but really good. And now it's complete. Not every story ends with perfect happiness, but some stories end with something better. Hard-won hope, carefully rebuilt trust, and the kind of love that's stronger for having been tested. This was one of those stories. 7 years ago, Mikkel had left a note on a kitchen table and walked away from the best thing in his life. Now, he was home. And he was never leaving again. Sometimes, second chances lead to the most beautiful endings. Have you ever been given, or given someone, a second chance that changed everything? What does family mean to you? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how this story touched you, and remember, it's never too late to come home to what matters most. The billionaire who returned after 7 years discovered not just a daughter he never knew existed, but the life he should have had all along, and this time, he chose right. Thanks for watching till the end. We know you loved this story, and there are many more thrilling ones waiting for you. Just click on the video on your screen to dive into the next chapter.